Alright, new year, new me. I'm gonna make the body I've always wanted to have for like a long time. Heck yeah. Wow, arms feel very weird. Anyway, let's talk about... Oh, whoa. Alright then. Let's talk about Beastars.
Tame the beast inside you. That's what it means to be an adult in this society.
The beast that lurks inside us all, waiting for the right chance to strike. Are you brave enough to embrace it? Or is it braver to keep such aspects in our mental cages? Have you let your beast out yet? This is the question Beastars seeks to help answer by illustrating such a case for your consideration. Or at least it would if it was the only thing to talk about in regards to this show. So I went into this show thinking, oh, so Japan tried their hand as Zootopia, alright. But came out of it more like, never mind, that was way better than I thought. This show is full of many subtleties, and I think it comments on Asian culture to an extent, if it wasn't dominated by the numerous examples of puberty and teen angst. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Spoiler warning here, I'm gonna talk about a lot of things in later episodes, so go watch the show first before you hear me ramble about it. Just get past episode 3 and you'll be fine. You'll either hate it or love it after that. If you've already watched it, let's see how wrong I am about this show. And if I am, be gentle, please. Now, me being the furry degenerate that I am, and proud, I saw trailers of this show and I was immediately ready to love it and sing its praises in the streets. Show me this glorious 3D looking anime. But it wasn't quite what I expected. I fell in love with the graphics, sure. They're a combination of hand-drawn and CG, and this formula works perfectly well here, but the moment you get past the murder in the first 5 minutes, which is always a great way to open any show, in my opinion, the focus shifts more towards the life in the school in which serves as a main setting. I hesitate to make serious comparisons to Zootopia because this show was not inspired by that. It's very similar, but it's not like they saw Zootopia and thought, hey, we want to do that. No. But it does one thing similar. Both shows have heavy social commentary through the use of animal metaphors. But while Zootopia has more of an obvious comedy buddy cop theme and more of a citywide aspect of coexistence, Beastars deals primarily with the idea of predator and prey dominating the mindset of everyone, to the point where even the bigger picture doesn't quite get in focus for that. This is a bit annoying at times, gotta be honest. You get the message of all herbivores are terrified of carnivores and will not hang out with any other carnivore or predator for that matter, if at all possible. But they're also forced to be with them in this school, so there's always this tension throughout the whole show, which is good, by the way. In the self-contained story, it's one of the best ways of setting an atmospheric tone for an onstage actors. Speaking of, we quickly meet one of our main actors, Lugosi, one of the main 3 characters of this show. He's a shy gray wolf who only wishes to get by in the school life without attracting too much attention. He is the main reinforcer of the idea of the show, but also kind of introducing 2 more. I'll get to those in a bit. We also see Lewis, the popular buck looking to become the next Beastar. From the show's vague descriptions, it seems like a social ambassador that leads the school, but also may have impact in society as a whole. These 2 characters have a sort of a frenemy thing going on throughout the whole show, and they, along with the rabbit Haru, are simple at first impression, but are very complex and have quite tragic backstories. Through them, we also see the nuances of the world and what really makes things tick. Despite being a small space, the school is practically the whole world for the show and the students, since it keeps them from the outside world and what really happens, according to what's implied. It also keeps the fragile hunter-prey truce in check. Sometimes not very well. Each student feels like they are just as important as the main characters, and the main group that's often used throughout the story is the stage crew of the drama club. Lugosi is part of this stage crew along with my favorite character, Dom. He is a peafowl and he is sassy and awesome and leads the group so well. Like, he's the most peppy of the group, and he just does his job very well. I love it. Peafowl is the general name of the family of birds. A peacock is a male peafowl and a peahen is a female peafowl? Huh, I didn't know that. And the young of a peacock and a peahen is called a peachick. Oh, that's adorable. Look at that thing. The drama club plays an important role aside from being a quasi-grudge proving ground. A lot of key characters deal with important events or realizations here that affect the rest of the story. It's a good touch to have an acting space, being very, very important. I'm glad the writers made it seem like more than just a stage or a rehearsal room. Heck, the stage is where Lugosi gets his first reality check and starts dipping into his beast side, and also sees how Lewis is much stronger than he ever thought, and sees through a really pivotal scene. That being said, the school also proves to be an excellent hunting ground, in a sense, for herbivores too, because you don't necessarily have to have fangs and claws to be like top dog here, because some herbivores are tougher than any carnivores in the show, like the infighting within the herbivores or within the carnivores, because the predator and prey line is very thin sometimes. And in a way, how being a predator in this school or this world is just as much a classist position as much as a species position. Let me talk about the three main characters before I get too distracted. Again, we don't see much of Lugosi as far as his past, but his actions are more focused on the present. He doesn't seem to dwell too much on things in his childhood. He comes across more as sympathetic, a struggling person in trying circumstances. Mind you, the character's like around 16 to 18, I think, high school years. So Lugosi being unsure is fitting. We've all been there. It sucks. I mean, Lugosi's been shunned all his life and internalizes this prejudice against carnivores and wolves in general, and made it a sort of limiter for his own personality. He wants to help those that we would consider herbivores or prey to show that he is a kind wolf, despite being, big and able to kill them if he needs to. He also has to contend with other tougher predators in the school, Bill being one of them. He knows he has the strength to contend, but doesn't wish to use it to stand out. Lewis, on the other hoof, is much more mature and assertive than most people in the show, and that is due to a very, very tragic past. We see through his flashbacks that he, around 5 to 6 years old, I think, was part of an underground market of animals being sold to predators for meat. Yeah, that's a thing in this show. That's the main reason that outside of the bubble of the school, carnivores and herbivores seem to get along so well, supposedly. The vague implications are more complex than that, but it's definitely a main factor as to why carnivores don't kill everyone. But if you were essentially food to be sold, but then given a chance to prove yourself and fight your way out, to fight against a system that labeled and treated you as a commodity, and sometimes in the case of the show's world, to fight against your own instincts. This applies to both Lewis and Haru, by the way. Lewis seeks to assert dominance over predators to prove he is above them, and above his previous misfortunate circumstances, while Haru is simply trying to be left alone. She was never put into the market, but even amongst the other rabbits and non-carnivores, she is seen as weak. She hates this, but knows her small size and soft appearance generally elicit a coddling response from bigger people, or make her an easy target for those amongst her size. So she took to, sleeping around with prey and predator alike. To her, it made her equal. She took advantage of base instincts, and bearing a promiscuous reputation that she's well aware of, she avoided being eaten, and at least somewhat safe. It's not the best idea sometimes, but it did keep her safe, and to her credit, she has kept alive so far. The characters play a sort of social cat-and-mouse style interaction throughout the whole show, specifically Lugosi and how he is confused by his attraction to Haru. Young love, essentially, but if Lugosi has never really had the luxury of emotional vulnerability, how would you know what that's like? Lugosi tries to get close, but doesn't want to, given that he almost ate her near the beginning, is so delightfully awkward most of the time. Then things get more complicated when Lugosi finds out that Haru is romantically involved with Lewis, and unbeknownst to him, it isn't entirely dating. This sort of love not quite triangle is the only one of the many factors in play in the show. I'm not going to bore you by waxing philosophical here. Let's talk about the graphics and their beauty. One of the main draws to this show, at least for me, was the 3D cel-shaded style, and I can't find any fault in this style here. I originally thought I was going to wear thin after episode 2, but they always find new ways to use the different aesthetics to their advantage. They render new angles of old rooms and big environments. They never seem flat or overpowering, like overtaking the characters, unless flashbacks are involved. These are purposely kept more pastel, as more literal background elements framed very nicely. Isn't really I like framing? I went to film school. I mean, bear with me for a second here. A lot of scenes have such good composition. Structural elements are used to literally frame characters. Mirrors and things are used to frame mindsets and show different sides of a person. My favorite is near the end of the show, where Lugosi and Haru are in a love hotel, for reasons, and Lugosi in the hotel is in regular colors and regular eyes, but the glass reflection has himself from when he tried to eat Haru the first time with red, like feral eyes. It's a moment where he has to choose between his logical and instinctual side. It really adds to that decision and to that moment of duality. But the aesthetic and framing aside, let me get to the cons of the show just real quick. The major one for me is, while integral to the show, is the idea of the whole predator and prey being a bit overdone. Now, the show is about instinct versus logic, having a sound versus feral mind, but there are several stretches of the show where it overtakes the scene's other messages. There are several scenes where characters are dealing with the whole, like, am I a predator or prey? Do I not want to hurt them? Blah, blah. And it gets a bit old, even taking over conversations to the point where you lose kind of the other nuances. This is my opinion here, and probably reading way too deep into this show, but the characters are smart enough to know they're not just their instincts, right? I'm assuming the Society of Animals built what they did, so I think they can know better. There are several scenes where characters know that contrast, like when Haru is talking to Legoshi in the cafeteria, and obviously feeling terrified of being in front of a wolf but not running away. I harp on this slightly because in this show, it does get a bit too focused sometimes on that, but to be fair, being generally unsure of yourself in your teens and only adding that you're around people that probably see you as a threat, it's not going to be easy. It's not. And when I mentioned the other nuance about this too, is a predator-prey thing, no research by the way, but does it comment on the tendencies in Asian cultures to focus on, shall I say saving face? I'm not trying to be racist, I promise, but I noticed that me being half Thai, mind you, I can say that there's a definite focus on keeping your public image, more so than Western culture at least. I get the impression that Beastars is commenting on this idea, but in Japanese culture, along with the commentary on racism and classism. But it's just me, I'm not trying to go over any lines. I had a much more in-depth part of this review written for the end of the show, so I'm just going to summarize it because it's still important, but I don't want to take too much longer than I have. So, Haru gets kidnapped by the lion Yakuza, because of course it's lions, and Lewis is told that, no, you shouldn't save her, maintain your public image, don't do anything, and then I will erase the history of you being ever in the meat trade, which of course he really, really wants. But, at the exchange of the love of his life, that gets complicated. It really shows how his character is more than just a pompous person trying to become the Beast Star. Far from, he has a lot of struggles, but they're only shown through small moments like this. Versus Legoshi's character should be much more simple. He wants to save her, he's gonna save her, and even told Lewis, if you don't save her, I will take her from you. Both in heart and maybe physically? Like, that could be a hunting thing as well as an actual, like, love thing. And, of course, Legoshi goes to save Haru, and he does, while walking right into the lion's den, and with the black market psychiatrist, Gohin, love this guy, he basically punches his way out to the main boss, and he embraces his feral side fully in front of Haru, kills the lion, or at least tries to by biting the neck, and takes Haru away. Of course, he didn't bite the vitals, and instead, Lewis is the one that finishes the struggle. He kills the lion. He gets his revenge on a predator, a big one at that. Does that mean he can't become Beastar? And even then, when the lions come in to grab him or capture him, he just gives up. He says, I am number 4, leave my antlers. There's more to it, I think. If the show's being as sneaky as it's going to be, then I think they're going to keep him alive and bring him back later, but it's an interesting end and a big twist ending on Lewis's character and how Legoshi just finally embraces his side. And then it goes to a really quick scene at the Meteor Festival, and then Legoshi promises Haru that he will tame his inner beast. I always do such a bad job talking about these shows. I've glossed over a lot of the show, so it bears repeating that I love the side characters in the show. You want to see their lives just as much as anyone else, and you feel just as bad for them too when things happen to them. When Kai gets demoted from an acting team person to a stagehand person by a spiteful Lewis because he's a predator. No, that's just what Lewis is gonna do. And poor Juno, she's introduced late in the season 1 as a rival to Haru of sorts, like a love rival. And one of the main reasons that the Haru even considers Legoshi as a potential match at all, Juno is overconfident but plays it off as a sort of friendly and happy person. But her story, I look forward to season 2 because I want to see more of her. She's already quite complex as it is in a good way, and I want to see her use more. This show is excellent. I'm glad I had a chance to watch it. It's an intense world with a relatable and often unfortunate characters that's loaded with symbolism and is no subtle critique on, I believe to be, Asian culture, if not society in general. Yeah, it gets a bit repetitive at times with the whole morals it presents or the dramatic tension, but it doesn't feel shoehorned in. It's an artistic stage play in anime form, and I would absolutely love to see a Broadway version of this one day. It has great characters, a rich world, and a subtly complicated message. If you made it this far in the video, please find a way to watch it. If I think it's still subbed right now, you can find it in some spots, but hopefully one day it may come to our Netflix. I don't know on that one. It'd be kind of nice. So in closing, remember to acknowledge your inner beast and instincts. And in the words of a great philosopher of our time, there's a she-wolf in your closet. Let it out so it can breathe. Ooh.